Have you ever pondered how Africa, a continent so rich in culture and resources, became a subject of European colonization? Africa, often referred to as the cradle of humanity, is a testament to the ingenuity and resilience of its people. From the splendid pyramids of Egypt in the north to the enigmatic ruins of Great Zimbabwe in the south, this land of abundance was, and still remains, home to gold, diamonds, ivory, and spices, with an array of unique flora and fauna that captivate the world. Now imagine a turning point where the tides of power and influence began to change, marking the start of Africa's colonization. From this moment, the intriguing tale of Africa's past, a testament to the resilience and spirit of a people who, despite adversity, have managed to preserve their rich cultural heritage and continue to shape their destiny, unravels. This intricate history is not merely a tale of victimhood, but a profound and lasting transformation of a continent. These are the stories we shall delve into. What would you do if you discovered an untouched treasure trove? Perhaps you'd do what the Europeans did in the late 19th century. Imagine the continent of Africa, a vast land teeming with diverse cultures, languages, and resources. Now picture Europe in the 19th century, an era of rapid industrialization and expansion. The European powers, eager for new markets and raw materials, turned their eyes towards Africa. This marked the beginning of a period known as the Scramble for Africa. In the blink of an eye, the European powers found themselves in a mad dash to claim as much of Africa as they could. The British, the French, the Germans, the Belgians, the Spanish, the Portuguese, and the Italians all wanted a piece of the African pie. But how to divide it fairly among themselves? The answer came in the form of the Berlin Conference. The Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885 was a meeting of European powers where the fate of Africa was decided without any African representation. Imagine a group of people deciding your future without your input. That's exactly what happened to the continent of Africa. The Europeans, armed with maps and rulers, divided Africa into spheres of influence, disregarding existing tribal and cultural boundaries. This arbitrary division of Africa led to a multitude of problems. Many African communities were split, while others found themselves under the rule of foreign powers with different languages and customs. This not only created tension and conflict within Africa, but also set the stage for the imposition of European cultures and systems on the African people. The impact of the Scramble for Africa was far-reaching. It marked the beginning of a new era of foreign control and influence in Africa, an era that would see the transformation of the African landscape, both physically and culturally. This scramble not only changed the borders of Africa, but also set the stage for significant cultural shifts. Can you imagine waking up one day to find your whole way of life altered? That was the reality for many African societies during the period of colonization. It was a time when foreign powers imposed their rule, bringing about profound transformations that continue to shape the continent. To begin, let's consider the political systems. Prior to colonization, Africa was home to a diverse range of political structures. Kingdoms, chiefdoms, and city-states existed side by side. However, with colonization came new political systems. Colonial powers imposed their forms of government, often disregarding existing local structures. This imposition of foreign rule disrupted traditional power dynamics and brought about a new order. The economic changes were just as significant. Africa's economy, which had been largely based on subsistence farming and regional trade, was forced to shift toward a capitalist model. This shift, driven by the colonial powers' desire for raw materials and cheap labor, resulted in the exploitation of Africa's resources. The extraction of diamonds, gold, and other valuable resources left the continent depleted, and the exploitation of African labor was rampant. Colonization also brought about changes in social structures. The introduction of new social norms and practices, often based on European values, led to a transformation of African societies. Traditional roles and relationships were disrupted, and new social hierarchies were introduced. This resulted in a loss of cultural identity for many, as they were forced to conform to European standards. Yet, it's important to remember that the impact of colonization wasn't universally negative. It also led to the introduction of modern education, healthcare, and infrastructure. These developments, though often implemented to serve the interests of the colonizers, also brought about some benefits. Colonization brought about drastic changes, but the transformation didn't end there. As we'll see in the next scene, the introduction of Western culture had a profound and lasting impact on Africa, shaping the continent in ways that continue to resonate today. What happens when two cultures collide? The answer lies in the history of Africa, where the introduction of Western culture created a vibrant and complex tapestry of traditions. When European powers set foot on African soil, they brought with them more than just their territorial ambitions. They brought their languages, religions, and educational systems, all of which would leave indelible marks on the societies they encountered. Let's start with language. English, French, Portuguese. These and other European languages were introduced to Africa during the colonial period. While they were initially a tool of control, over time they became an integral part of the cultural landscape, used in business, government, and education. Today, they coexist with thousands of local languages, creating a rich linguistic diversity. Next, let's talk about religion. Christianity was introduced to Africa by European missionaries, who sought to spread their faith among the local populations. While this was met with resistance in some areas, in others, it took root and grew. Today, Christianity is one of the major religions in many African countries, existing alongside Islam and traditional African religions. And then there's education. The Western-style education system introduced by the colonizers was a dramatic departure from traditional African methods of knowledge transmission. It emphasized literacy and numeracy, subjects like science and history, and the use of formal examinations. This system, while often criticized for its Eurocentric bias, has also been a driving force behind many of the advancements in modern Africa. Finally, we can't forget about fashion and work culture. Western-style clothing became popular, particularly in urban areas, and Western work ethics and structures were introduced, significantly altering the way work was conducted in African societies. The introduction of Western culture was not without its controversies and conflicts, and its legacy is complex. But it also resulted in a fascinating fusion of traditions. African societies absorbed these foreign influences, adapted them, and made them their own. This fusion of cultures resulted in a unique blend that is evident in today's Africa. What lasting marks did colonization leave on Africa? Let's delve into the enduring impacts of colonization on the continent. First, we look at the economic challenges. the extraction model of natural resources, established during the colonial era, continues to this day, leaving Africa as a supplier of raw materials to the world, but rarely a developer of finished goods. This has hindered the continent's economic growth and development, making it dependent on the global market whims. Then there's political instability. The arbitrary borders drawn by colonial powers disregarded ethnic and cultural differences, leading to ongoing conflict and political tension. This has resulted in a legacy of political instability that continues to plague many African nations. But the legacy of colonization isn't merely economic or political, it's cultural too. Western languages, for instance, are widely spoken across the continent. From English in Nigeria to French in Senegal, these languages are a constant reminder of the colonial past. They are used in education, government, and business, often sidelining indigenous languages. Speaking of education, Western-style schooling was introduced during the colonial period. While it brought literacy to many, it also often devalued native knowledge and cultural practices. Today, most African countries still use a Western model of education, which can sometimes feel disconnected from local realities. Religion is another area where the impact of colonization is still felt. Christianity, introduced by European missionaries, has become one of the dominant religions in Africa. Many African societies have blended Christian practices with traditional beliefs, creating unique forms of worship. Fashion, too, was influenced. Western-style clothing is common in many parts of Africa, often replacing or existing alongside traditional attire. So, the legacy of colonization is complex and multifaceted. It's a tapestry woven with threads of economic challenge, political instability, and cultural change. It's a story of adaptation and resilience in the face of imposed change. Colonization ended, but its ripples are still felt across Africa today, shaping the continent in ways we often overlook. Imagine a world where self-sufficiency is replaced by servitude. This was the reality for many Africans during colonization. The shift from self-employed farmers to gardeners serving Europeans altered the socio-economic dynamics and the agricultural landscape of the continent. Before colonization, African farmers were the backbone of their communities, producing food for their families and trading surplus with neighbors. But colonial rule saw them become gardeners, tending to European-owned farms and plantations. This shift not only disrupted the agricultural practices that had been passed down for generations, but also replaced self-sufficiency with a system of servitude. The transformation didn't stop at agriculture. Independent food sellers, who once thrived in local markets selling locally sourced food, found themselves becoming chef employees in European households. They were made to wear the uniform of servitude, cooking European dishes instead of the traditional meals they were accustomed to. This introduced a new work culture and uniformity, effectively erasing the rich diversity of African culinary traditions. Yet, the most brutal transformation was the slave trade. Millions of Africans were displaced from their homelands and forced into a life of hard labor and inhumane treatment. The scars of this dark chapter in history are still visible today as African societies grapple with the lasting impacts of this forced displacement and exploitation. But the story doesn't end here. Despite the harsh realities of the past, Africa has the power to shape its future. The resilience and spirit of the African people are a testament to this. Today, as we look at the vibrant, diverse, and dynamic societies across the continent, we see the evidence of a people who have refused to be defined solely by their colonial past. Let's not dwell on the past, but channel our energy towards building a better future for the African continent. A future where the agricultural landscapes are once again dominated by self-sufficient farmers, where culinary traditions are celebrated and preserved, and where the scars of slave trade are acknowledged but not allowed to define the identity of the continent. The transformation of African society was a product of colonization, but the future of Africa lies in the hands of Africans. And that future is bright, diverse, and full of promise. History is not just a collection of past events, but a guide for the future. The story of Africa is no different. The continent's rich history and diverse cultures are a testament to its resilience and spirit. As we look towards the future, it is crucial that we learn from this history and use it to shape a better future for Africa. Education is a powerful tool in this journey. By learning about Africa's history, cultures, and traditions, we can better understand the challenges it faces today and contribute to finding solutions. Whether you're an educator, a student, or simply a curious mind, we encourage you to delve deeper into Africa's story. Read books, watch documentaries, engage in conversations, and immerse yourself in the vibrant cultures of the continent. But understanding is only the first step. Real change requires action, whether it's investing in African businesses, advocating for policies that promote equality and justice, or simply using your voice to spread awareness. Every action counts. Remember, the future of Africa is not just in the hands of Africans, but in the hands of all who care for its prosperity. Unity is a powerful force. When we stand together, we can overcome any obstacle. As we reflect on the transformation of African society, let's remember the power of collective action. Let's stand together in shaping Africa's destiny. Let's ensure that the scars of the past do not dictate the future. Together, we can write a new chapter for Africa, a chapter of prosperity, unity, and self-determination. A chapter where the vibrant cultures of Africa are celebrated, where its people thrive, and where its history is acknowledged, but not allowed to define its future. The story of Africa continues, and we all have a part to play in writing its next chapter.